Okay, and off we go. Kristen, I appreciate you spending some time with me today to talk about your kids and giving them lessons on how to ride without training wheels on their own. And the first thing I want to talk about, though, is just the requirements. And you mentioned your kids are 5 and up, 5 and 8, and that's great because to me, 5 is like a magic age. And I know there's lots of people out there, 3-year-olds that are riding bikes. They're amazing. They'll probably end up being Olympians or something because they've already riding their bike at 3. But to me, there's like some special thing, like when they learned to walk and they suddenly had that balance at about 1 year. To me, 5's a magic number based on what I've seen for kids having the ability to listen real well and balance
Hmm.
on a bike real well. If they're really doing great before that, terrific. But for the lessons I've done over the 15 plus years, usually it's 5 plus, so that you're in the sweet spot right there. And
Right.
there's no beyond that, any age is good. I've taught 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 16-year-olds, you name it. So any age is good. The other requirement I typically have, though, and it's good when they're little to learn, it'd be hard with 16-year-olds, but it's great to have a small bike where they have used training wheels instead of the balance bikes and the handles and all that stuff. I like for them to have the training wheels on first because then they learn to trust the bike a little bit and they learn to pedal the bike. I've had kids show up where they're using their feet and they're trying to balance with their feet. And to me, that kind of, I'm sure there's people that say they're great and whatever else, that's fine. But I have kids showing up where they don't even know how to keep their feet on the pedals.
Hmm.
They'll show up with their feet are flying off or they're sliding around. And it's like you have to know the general idea that to make a bike move, you have to make your feet move and you have to be
Yeah.
continually rotating them, right? So to me, training wheels are great. And then obviously, try and lift them up a teeny bit before you are ready to teach them to ride without training wheels. You don't have to get very far. You really don't have to be on training wheels that long to have a comfort with the bike. And then as far as the seat height is concerned, I like for the kids to be able to touch the ground with their feet, but not flat flat-footed. I'd rather that they can just get maybe half their shoe on the ground and their heels a little bit off the ground so that they're a little bit higher. You want that comfort that they can put their feet down, but I don't if you lower the seat too much so that they're flat-footed, sometimes when they're riding, their knees are really getting too high and they're almost in the way. So
Yeah.
you have that compromise of where that should be. They'll quickly forget about their feet as long as they know they can touch the ground. So that's kind of a seat height requirement. Obviously, you have to build trust with them before the lesson starts. Most of the time, it's the parents or it's me, and I ask, what they do outside and things like that. So we can say, hey, you like to run, you like to do things with balance that are required and hand-eye coordination. You can do this bike thing just the same. You're going to use those same skills. But to build that trust, the key thing I say to them is, I'm going to be right next to you the entire time, even when you're riding on your own. I'll be next to you. So it's a tough one, parents. You have to be able to run. I mean, you might have to get a neighbor kid or a nephew, niece, or something like that if you're not able to run with them because they have to get up to a decent speed to keep that momentum. We all know that you got to keep the bike moving forward to keep it balanced. It certainly helps. So for sure, let them know that you're going to be right by their side. And I'll talk about what that looks like as we go along. But the starting point of being next to them is take your hand and you put it at the nape of their neck, right here, centered on their body, right? I don't want you holding their shoulder or their elbow, even if you were to hold their head at some point towards the end where they just feel you touching them centered on their body. You want everything on their body to be the same on the left side and the right side. That's balance. So you don't want to be part of the disharmony there. So
Hmm.
it's right there. And when you start, you grip on that neck. Okay. You let them know I got you. As they tip a little bit left and right, you're helping them with the balance. You're keeping them straight up. Okay. And that's why it's the nape of the neck. So, hey, get those daughters, put the hair in a ponytail so you can get underneath it and get it out of the way. No tank tops, because at some point you might be actually just gripping the shirt towards
Hmm.
instead of, you'll see as we go, instead of gripping their neck. So you need something to hold on to there. So make sure there's some fabric there to hold on to. But you'll start with that grip. Um, as far as when the lesson starts, yeah, obviously the training wheels are off. You're not going to have that. And when it comes to the brakes, for the smaller bikes, you might have the coaster brake where you pedal backwards to stop. I prefer that to the handbrake. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there's two. If there is a handbrake in the front to control the front, I would tell them, let's just focus on stopping the rear wheel. Show them how brakes work. When you come
Hmm.
back, show them that the chain locks it, so they understand how they're stopping the bike. If there is a brake on the front, you can show them how the brake levers work and that they squeeze the rim. But if there is one on the front, explain to them that if you hit the front and not the back, you buck like a horse.
Right.
I literally make them buck. I say, let's go ahead and stop that and let's watch and I kind of lift them off the ground. It's like, this is what the bike wants to do when you're just stopping the front wheel. So make it clear that the rear wheels where we start with, and the front brake is really for extra braking if it's wet, if you're going downhill, if you have to stop really fast. But in most cases, especially at their size, the rear is going to be enough. Going back to the one I prefer, the back, is that way they have their hands on the handlebars, and they don't have to reach for anything. Again, let's be the same. Let's keep it all the same.
Right.
So moving hands around changes things and throws things off. Let them just use their feet to stop. So that's it on the brakes. So then it's time to start the lesson. Finally,
I have a quick question.
do it.
Can I jump
Yes.
in?
Yeah.
Is there a recommendation on location or how much space you need?
Great question. Great question. All my lessons are on my street, and my street is about one block, or not even a city block, but it's about 4 houses wide, long, and it's got a little bit of a tilt to it in the middle of it. There's a little bit of a slope going down, and therefore when they turn around that slope, they have to go back up, and it's so perfect. And I'll explain why in my lesson. But as far as going and finding that, not necessary. Relatively flat is good. I like a whole street to work with. You could do it in a parking lot just the same, I suppose. But since you're running with them, consider that you're going to want to run 4 houses down the street and turn around and come back and let everyone catch their breath.
Okay.
So for me, that's a great question. It's an out and back route that you're just going back and forth, because as you'll see, we do this in steps. This lesson goes in steps, and each step is just going out and back. Sometimes you repeat it. Very, very good. So when I have a kid coming to my street, I'll say, look at the street. First of all, look at the street. After I've told them, hey, I'm going to be with you and all that at all times right by your side, I say, okay, let's look at the street for a second. Let's just scope things out. Are there any giant holes in the ground? Are there any squirrels running around? Lava maybe coming out, or dragons, or anything strange about this street? Or is it just a plain old street? I said, it's always, same answer, plain old street, nothing to worry about, nothing to bike around or anything. Then there's absolutely no reason to be, push their head down. There's absolutely no reason to be staring down at it when you're riding. There's nothing to see down there. Every kid, just about every kid, I've done 250 lessons. Almost every kid wants to look down at their feet or the street.
Hmm.
Are my feet still attached? Are they on the pedals? Is there anything down there that I have to be worried about? There's nothing to be worried about. So the first thing we talk about is Coach Jeff's rule of straight. That's body posture. Everything should be straight, including the front wheel. So what's straight? Well, let's go from toes to nose, as I like to say. From toes to nose, everything is straight. Your toes are pointed straight ahead. Your feet are covering the pedals. Your pedals shouldn't show. So they're covering them up, not halfway covered, but literally one right on top of the pedal. Shoelaces or those Velcro straps should be right over the pedal. Okay, not the toes, not the heel, but right in the middle of the shoe. Okay. And some kids have struggled with that right off the bat. That's the place they struggle. So, and we want those toes pointed straight ahead, not in, not out. Same for the knees. The knees shouldn't be hitting the middle bar, and they shouldn't be bow-legged either. Knees and toes point in the direction where the bike goes. And so does the nose. You move the nose, the knees, the toes, you're going to go in the direction they go. Okay. And again, we want the body to be the same on both sides. So if they tend to put one foot out, I've seen it many times where one toe is pointed out, we're no longer symmetric, we're no longer balanced, we're off balance.
Mhm.
So everything toes to nose is straight, including the torso. Some want to lean forward, just be proud and tall. But at the same time, and we talked about this before that we started talking, recording, um, relaxed. So that means that the shoulders droop a little bit. We want them under the ears, but we don't want them under the ears. We want them not forward or back. We want them under the ears, but relaxed. And arms, you might say arms straight along with Jeff's rule of straight, but that's the one exception I make. I talk to them about spaghetti. Have you ever seen spaghetti before and after it's cooked? Before it's cooked, it's stiff. And after it's cooked, it's loose. So I want you to be the loose cooked spaghetti. I want the arms to be loose. Don't lock them. Loose. And that way they act as shock absorbers. If they were straight and tight, if you move a shoulder or anything, you're going to move the handlebars and you're going to not be going straight ahead anymore, right? But if you're loose, the arms can kind of absorb some of that movement, and you won't be moving the wheel, the handlebars through the wheel too much. And that's the last piece that has to be straight. Rule of straight includes the wheel. Make sure they understand that the back wheel never is unstraight, right? It never turns, it's locked. The front one, that's your call. And I always remind them that you're the boss of the bike, not the other way around. You tell the bike what to do. It responds to you. The bike is not telling you what to do. So if you want to go straight, you keep the rule of straight, you keep everything straight and loose and relaxed, and you tell the bike to go straight. Now, where are you supposed to be looking? Straight ahead, right? Rule of straight, nose is pointed straight, so you're going to be looking straight ahead. Give them something to focus on, okay? I typically will say, stay right where you are, and I'll walk about 10 yards away, and I'll look at them and I'll say, this is where you should be looking, at me this far away. Okay, or even into the distance beyond that if you want, but I want you to look ahead. Some of them need something physically to look at. So that tree at the end of the street, or that house that's at the cul-de-sac, the red door, whatever it is, give them something to look at and say, you need to be looking at that. Okay, that also keeps them from looking at their sister or brother off to the side. It's like, look where you're going. Okay,
Right.
so you say all this stuff, it really takes not that much time, and then you say, let's try it. So you do your monster grip and you say, let's practice the rule of straight, and let's just slowly, a little bit of momentum, but slowly go down the street and keep everything the way it's supposed to be. Now, this is when you get your first chance at being the bike whisperer, me, and you have to look at, is everything truly straight? Are the feet staying on the pedals? Are they shifting around? Okay. Are they looking straight ahead, or are they looking down? They're most likely looking down on the first one. Okay. Are they rotating the pedals, or are they just coasting? A lot of them, if they haven't practiced this, or if they're nervous, they'll just freeze their feet. Tell them, keep pedaling. Up and down, making ice cream, chocolate and vanilla, whatever it is you have to say, like with swimming lessons, you need to keep your feet moving just like you'd keep your hands moving in the pool. Okay, and again, most importantly, are they looking where they're going? At this point, you're just trying to get comfort with the bike. So rule of straight, if you have to do that several times with a break in between, let's keep practicing that rule of straight first. Do that, because that's really critical. If they are, I've had kids many times, their feet flying off. I said, we're going to keep going. I'm going to stop you. For right now, you make them turn. What I mean by that is you turn the bike for them, and you slow them down and then bring them to a stop. We're only focusing on one thing at a time on each of these lessons. This one's just the rule of straight. So with that in mind, you do all the other stuff. So as they go down the street, if you see their feet flying off, say, put them back on right now. We're not stopping. Put them back on. They need to learn that in motion, they can correct things. During this lesson, the first thing they're correcting is their body posture. So tell them to fix that, and we're not stopping to fix it. Put that foot back on the pedal. Okay. I joke with some of them. Sometimes it does take 2 or 3 turns, I say, I'm going to go get my glue and I'm going to glue your shoe to the pedal if I have to. Or I'm going to get duct tape, but I'm going to duct tape your, I use a lot of humor with the kids, but it's like pretend I am. As a matter of fact, I lift their shoe off and I put pretend glue on and I press it back on the pedal and I say, you're glued on now. And our goal, forget everything else I taught you for a minute. Our goal for this run is just to keep your feet on the pedals. I don't even care if you look down on this one, right? Because we
Yeah,
identifying on this very first trip up and down, or the second trip up and down, what their Achilles heel is, which thing is going out of whack. It might be.
on that same kind of line, one thing I've noticed kind of so far with my kiddo is him feeling worried about the balancing.
Yep.
And he has done a little training wheels riding, but to be on that without the training wheels, he gets pretty nervous.
Right.
So when you're holding on to the back of their neck, is that usually enough for them to feel stable, or do you feel like you have to kind of help them hold up their torso?
You grip enough that they feel you helping with the balance. So as they lean, you pull them back to straight up and down.
Okay.
Okay. Remind them that they're not going that fast. And say, for right now, I've got you. Slowly but surely over these lessons, they'll need you less and less. And and then coming up, step 3 is when we talk about the leaning. We're only at step 1, but great question, because you're going to have to earn their trust that, look, don't worry about the leaning. I've got you. I want you to focus on just the rule of straight. If you
Okay.
give them one thing to focus on at a time, they will learn how to ride the bike one step at a time instead of just saying, do everything all at once. It's
Right.
for some kids. Okay, so great question. If I don't answer that in 2 more steps, we'll come back. Please maybe come back to it. Okay, so far we've just gotten them comfortable with making the pedals move and what the body posture should look like. Sometimes to demonstrate what symmetry really is, I'll play a game with them where I'll put both arms out straight and both legs kind of out, but I'm still exactly the same on both sides of my body. And I'll say, am I symmetric? Am I the same on both sides? They'll say yes. And then I'll put one arm up in the air and leave the other one where it is. Am I symmetric now? No. And then I'll try and trick them, and I'll like do one where it's like both arms are up and both legs are out. I'm making an X with myself. Am I symmetric now? And the answer is yes. I'm still the same on both sides, even though it's crazy. So symmetry, get them thinking about just being a mirror of themselves. So once we've got rule of straight, at some point along the way, I'll say it now just in case I don't remember, somewhere along these steps, they're going to start to move a little bit faster because they're going to gain more confidence and they're going to be pedaling a little bit harder. They might feel like they're going too fast. So one thing I do often do is I play a little, I insert a lot of games in here. And one of the games I play is I do a race with them. We get off the bike and we line up and I say, I want you to realize that you're not going that fast. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to race. We're going to race from here to that mailbox. And you're going to run as fast as you can. And I'm going to run only at the speed this bike has been going so far. So obviously they win this race, right? They run as fast as they can. You kind of trot along somewhat close to the rate that the bike was going. It's obviously not that fast as a kid can run, and even race right back. And I'll say, so did you fall? Did you feel like you were going to fall when you were running as fast as you could? No. Why? Well, I trust my running. I trust my balance. I'm like, you're going to have to trust your balance on the bike. And by the way, you're going even slower on the bike than you can run. So if you're not afraid when you're running, maybe you won't be afraid when you're biking too. So we try and eliminate some of the fear there. Okay, let's go on to the second lesson. Second lesson is about coasting and keeping momentum. So when you are, and this does help if you've got a little bit of a slope, but you can do this even without it. You can teach them that if you feel like you're going a little too fast, okay, you can coast at times. Let the bike move along. You remind them about the term gravity, right? A lot of them know what it is. You say, if I drop a ball from here and it hits the ground, what force is causing that? Oh, gravity. Yeah. So gravity helps the bike move down a hill, or momentum, a force similar to gravity, makes it go forward once it gets going. You can take a break once in a while and coast. So I call it freezing your feet, freeze them where they are, okay? And coast and let them know that you can even tell the bike to keep going, but you're not going to go any faster by coasting. But with that little hill we have on the return on my street, now they have to work hard. I say, can you coast? You know, does gravity help you going down a hill? Yes. Does gravity help you going up the hill? No, it makes it harder. So what do you need to do? I need to pedal harder. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Will it make you speed up and go too fast? No, you're barely going to get it fast enough to get up that hill. So you have to be willing to work. So I might be, I don't call it yelling. I call it more of a loudly, emphatically cheering for you to move faster, harder, pedal harder up that hill, right? So I'm telling you right now, I'm going to tell you pedal harder, pedal harder. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to get you to get up that hill. So the next round of going up and down that street is just for them to practice a coast. So at some point when they get going, tell them to freeze their feet, let them feel what coasting feels like, get to the end of the street, turn around, come back, and maybe pretend there's a hill and pedal a little bit harder so they could see what it would take to go up a hill if you don't have one. At this point too, you might just notice how much effort is required for that grip. Are you able to loosen it a teeny bit? If so, go for it. You also want to make sure they know for coasting that when you are about to reach the end of your little out and back, they should start integrating coasting into the right before I stop. Right? Just like we do at stoplights, we take our foot off the gas pedal and we coast a little bit and then we hit the brake. So same thing with that bike. Tell them to stop pedaling because you don't need to pedal right up into the moment you're going to stop. You can freeze your feet, you know, several feet before, and then you stop them because they haven't learned, in theory, they haven't learned to stop yet. You're still
Mm-hmm.
turning them, you're still stopping them. So that's
When
step three.
you're stopping them,
Yep.
is that just do you grab onto the bike or do you just
Yeah, you can grab the handlebar and maybe a shoulder, you know, just to, you know, if they're coasting, they're not going that fast. So you just kind of slow them down and then bring them to a stop. Yep, great question. So now we go into the third step. Third step is handling that leaning problem. And they might say, I keep leaning, you know. And so here's one of Coach Jeff's top secrets, real secret. I'm sharing it with the world. You don't, a lot of parents will say, lean the other way, counterbalance that leaning, you know, or pull, you know, and all this other stuff. And they're just jerking around on the bike. And a lot of times that doesn't do any good. And if you watch pro cyclists and you watch motorsports, motorcyclists, I have no idea what motorcyclists really do, but you could see how they're using, they're obviously they're in a lean, but they're doing it on purpose, but they're using their hands to control the bike. And what I tell the kid is if the bike leans to the right, I'm not going to get this right on the camera though, but if the bike leans to the right, you will use your left hand, you will push gently on the handlebar. Okay, you'll push gently on the handlebar to bring the bike up to straight up and down again. And there's this, I say a little bit, and that will come up later in a few steps. But you'll push down to the handlebar a little bit, and that's again keeping the body symmetric, and the hands are just doing some pushing. And you might have to literally put your hand, put it face up, right next to the handlebar, okay, the grip, and say, push my hand down gently. Push my hand down. Now do that on the bike. Push, and now you'll take the bike and you'll lean it over and you'll say, fix it. And they'll push on the other side. And then you lean at the other side and they push on the other side. And you let them start rocking the bike back and forth by pushing with their hands. Fix the lean yourself. When you feel like you're leaning, fix it right away. Little tricky. This one's the hardest one, but you want them to feel like they can control the lean without doing too much with their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to tell them, and this doesn't work for everybody. That's why some people just have to see the bike whisperer, but you have to tell them you have to do it right away. As soon as you start to lean, fix it. Because obviously, if you lean too much, it's over, right? And if they stop and the bike's coming to a stop, it's over. But if they can keep pedaling and if they could fix the lean as they go, you know, and this is something you can only do while you're riding along. It's very hard to do this at slow speed because the bike is leaning too dramatically. But as you see the bike leaning, instead of jerk as you go down and up the street for the step 3, don't help them as much. Tell them to fix it themselves. So don't jerk them back
Mhm.
straight up and down. Here you're starting to loosen up and you say, you can feel it still in your hand that they're leaning left or right. Okay. But you are telling them, fix the lean, fix it, fix it. And I'll say fix it 100 times because it might be, hey, your feet aren't on the pedals anymore. Fix it. Okay.
Mhm.
Turn the wheel a little bit, fix it. Everything is a little bit. If the wheel gets turned, just fix it a little bit. Don't overcompensate. Everything on a bike is a little bit. I actually call this the rule of little bits.
Mhm.
Going to come up in a big way coming up. So fix the lean, and this might be an up and back you do several times because as they lean, you're like, try and fix it, try and fix it. But make sure that they're moving along enough that the bike has the chance to respond. There has to be forward momentum. That's a requirement. And almost every single time with the kids, they do get faster as they go, as they gain more confidence and they pedal. You might even have to say, pedal a little bit harder, pedal a little bit harder, make the bike go a little bit faster.
Mhm.
You know, don't say the word faster, but just say pedal the bike a little harder. So this one, we're watching them, seeing how they fix the lean, and again loosening your grip a little bit. So at this point, double check their grip. Make sure that they're not squeezing it for all it's worth, squeezing the juice out of the lemons. Okay. I tell them, as a matter of fact, I put sometimes if I notice they're white knuckling it, I put my 2 fingers next to the handlebar, next to the grips, and I say, grip my fingers the way you're gripping the handlebar, right? And they wrap on there, and I say, and grip it the amount that you're, you know, however hard you're holding it, let me know. And oh my goodness, now pretend you're holding an egg or potato chips. Okay, egg or potato chips. That's the grip I want you to have. Because sometimes you'll even see them going, whew, they're shaking their hands out. If they're shaking their hands out, they are gripping way too hard, right?
Right.
And that too is kind of like having the stiff arms,
Mhm.
right? Because if you're gripping too hard, you're not letting things be loose. A tenseness again in the body. So that even in the hands, we got to be loose. So remind them that the only thing the hands have to do is fix the lean. And by the way, some kids want to start pushing down like this. No, you have to push down, you know, wrapping the thumb around one side, the fingers are on the other. That's still proper grip. You can push down, staying in the loose grip. Don't take your fingers out to do that. That was just for
Mhm.
demonstration, right? So fix the lean and double check the grip around step 3. Huh. Step 4, they're starting to move. It's like, hey, you're doing great. Encouraging them every step, of course, but you're doing great. You're actually making this bike move. So we better learn about how to properly stop so that you feel you have control of stopping as you start to speed up a little bit. You know how to stop properly. Okay, and there's 4 steps to stopping. Not one. It's not put your feet on the ground. That's actually the last step. Okay, there's 4 steps, oh, I know what they are. I know what they are, and they don't know what they are. So the first step is to coast. Remember, when we're getting into that last few feet, if you know you're going to stop, you're going to coast. Now that's an optional because if a squirrel runs out on the road, you don't always get to coast first. We get that. It's coast if you can before you stop. Actually, I tell the kids there's only 3 steps. We don't make coasting a part of the steps, but they sometimes forget. So I like to say, okay, you coast, and then we do our 3 steps. However you want to do it, 3 or 4. But once you've started coasting, the next step, what I call step 1 is to put on the brakes, right? So pedal backwards, or if there isn't a coaster brake, then I guess they're gonna have to squeeze that rear brake, okay? Not the front. Remember we did the bucking thing. So squeeze the brake, that's step 1. Step 2 is the one they always forget. Hold it there. Hold the brake. Hold it back, right?
Mhm.
Don't let go. And there's a couple of things that come into play here. A lot of kids haven't played tug of war like I did when I was their age, but when we played tug of war, you were fighting the other side, right? So I play tug of war with them. I say, I'm going to pull this bike forward and you're going to make it not go by holding the brake. And you play tug of war with them. Okay. And if you can make the bike move, they're not holding the brake in place. They've let go. And they need to understand that the bike still has a little bit of this mysterious momentum. When they put on the brake, it still is kind of wanting to go forward until you wait a second or two.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to hold it for a second or two. So you play tug of war for a second or two and make that bike come to a full stop. That's step 2, come to a full stop. Hold the brake. And then I say, you know what step 3 is? And I let go of the bike and they go bloop, to one side or the other. They put a foot down. And I say, that's step 3, right? Step 3 is put your foot down. And you have to do this braking thing in that order. 1, 2,
Mm-hmm.
3. You know, we don't, putting your foot down is not step 1. That's doing a Fred Flintstone. And only the parents know who that is in most cases, but we don't brake with our feet. So 1, 2, and 3. And then what you do is you say, let's start and go like a few times, 3 or 4 times. And at this point, you can kind of get in front of the bike and say, start pedaling, and you pull them along. And, you know, they're going to kind of be coming at you, but you're just walking backwards. And you say, brake. And they have to do the brake, and they have to do all 3 steps. And they have to, if you're holding just the handlebar, let's say, they have to do the step 1, 2, and then put their foot down themselves. Okay. And do it multiple times so that they feel those 3 steps and make sure they're not skipping step 2. They'll most likely skip step 2. Once you've practiced this a few times, then I like to play a game where we're going to now bike down the street, practicing everything we've learned so far, putting everything together, every lesson. You're saying, don't forget the rules straight, you know, fix the lean, coast here if you need to coast here. So we're adding these together. But on this one, when we come back, we're going to stop just shy of this reflector in the ground. As a matter of fact, do you have a brother or sister? You do? Or a favorite stuffed animal? You do? Okay. What's the name? Okay. It's Jeff. Okay. We're going to put Jeff on this blue reflector. And your job is not to run over Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
So we go down the street, you know, another game that I play, you know, we go down the street, we come back. I tell them, I'll tell you when to coast. I'll tell you when you should think about stopping, but you better stop or you're going to run over your sister. You're going to run over your favorite animal, your pet, whatever it is. And you get them to coast when they start getting close and you say, stop. And they have to do all 3 steps. A recent lesson, they ran right over. Oh my God, you ran over your brother. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. A lot of times though, they'll want to stop long before they get there, and that's fine. I don't care really where they stop, but I want them to do all 3 steps. You will practice from there forward for the rest of the day. You will make them stop. You will no longer stop the bike. You'll just say, okay, we're going to stop here. So coast, they coast. Now stop, they stop. They do all 3 steps. Watch them carefully. Make sure they're not skipping step 2.
Mm-hmm.
Step 3 at the front of the 3 steps for stopping. So now they know how to stop, and you remind them, hey, now you know how to stop. So if there's an emergency, you can stop the bike. But although you're the boss of the bike, our goal every single time, so important, is to get to the end of the street and back without stopping. If they're stopping you never get momentum if they start stopping every time they're, it's like from the very first rule of straight, very first up and down, you have to say our goal is to get all the way up and back without stopping, because it is a perfect distance for them. So don't let them overuse their power. They need to stop only at the ends. Okay. Somewhere along the way, they've probably taken a few water breaks here and there, judge that, see how they're doing. But I don't like to take very long break. They break for probably 1 minute. They swig some liquid and not too much, or else it's juggling around in their stomach. And we say, come on back, and we get back to business because there's momentum in this lesson. They're putting things together. There's a lot of momentum, and I don't want any break in that momentum. So we keep going. Lessons typically last an hour and a half. And at this point, every kid's different, and we're just feeling it out. Now, again, every time I go up and back, I'm attempting to loosen my grip as much as I can. And for the the instructor, the teacher, the parent, the hardest part is going from this to gripping that shirt.
Hmm.
'Cause you're relinquishing power to help them.
Right. It's almost like they're actually doing it and you're
They
just
are
providing them a
actually
little bit of noticing that you're still there if they really need you, right?
exactly right. And and you can still kind of yank on that shirt a little bit. If they're just tipping a teeny bit and they're not fixing it, you can yank on that shirt a little bit. You can still help them with control, but remembering to tell them to fix it. Fix it, fix it. You're leaning to the right, fix it, and they'll fix it. Um, and sometimes kids will slowly not need the hand fixing thing because they're going fast enough now that the bike isn't even going to lean. So they're just focused on
Hmm.
the rule of straight, focused on, okay, where am I supposed to be looking? They're focusing on what they're learning and not falling. Okay. Now, before we go to step 5, let's talk about falling. So once in a while, a kid is just so freaked out about falling. So I say, okay, if you were to fall from the top of my house, would that hurt? Oh, yeah, that would hurt a lot. Yeah, you're right. It would probably break a leg. If you were to fall from that shorter tree, yeah, that would still be pretty bad. I'm like, you're right. If you were to fall from the top of my mailbox, yeah, but maybe not as bad. Okay, look at where your foot is on your bike. You are this far from the ground. If you were to fall from this bike, do you think it hurt that badly? Well, maybe I'll scrape my knee or something. I'm like, okay, then let's fall right now. So I literally at times, if they're that afraid, I say, you and I are gonna fall on the ground right now. And I help them fall. Slow motion. We don't fall in real time. We just kind of fall over slowly and we end up on the ground on our backs with our arms out. I'm like, did we survive? I say, and I joke with them all the time. I say, do me a favor, make your knees go in and out. And now make your arms do this, flap up and down. And I say, oh, you're doing the chicken dance. I think you're okay. Do the polka, right? I went to University of Wisconsin, so the chicken dance was part of our football games back in the day. But the the idea is falling is not the end of the world.
Hmm.
If you get a little scrape, it's going to be okay. And remember, we had that race, and we aren't going that fast. Remember that part? You're not afraid of scraping your knee when you're running, and even if you did scrape your knee when you're running, you're still here. You live to tell the tale. So remind them that falling is not a big deal. That's depending on the kid. Don't do that one unless they're really afraid of it, and tell them it's going to be okay. All right, step 5. See, and they're getting closer to riding on their own. And some kids by now they are riding on their own. Especially if I did a couple of times for some of these, and at this point we've gone up and down the street 10 times or 12 times. Um, by now it might be that they're close and I almost want to go ahead and kind of let go, but I'm like, no, that we've got a good thing going here. They're kind of riding on their own. They don't know yet, which is hilarious, but we'll keep on. We'll keep on. And so now we talk about turning. So turning, a lot of kids get screwed up because they think they literally have to point the wheel in the direction they want to go. So I'll line up the bike on a line on the street, some kind of seam or something that's going parallel to the bike. And I'll put them right on it. And I'll say, okay, if we wanted to go to my neighbor's tree over there on the left, okay, how much would you have to turn the wheel to turn the bike. We all know this. You know this, I know this. But how much would you turn the wheel? And they'll say this much. And of course, it's way too much. And I'll say, okay, let's try it. Let's try it. So at this point, I kind of grip them again. I said, slow motion here. We're just going to start going and let's see where the bike goes. And of course, it's going almost back the way it came, right? It's almost turned around within seconds because they're turning the wheel way too much. How'd that go? Oh, that didn't go too well. I'm like, what do you think we need to do to fix that? We need to turn it less. And literally, I tell them to get off the bike, and because I'll say, how much you think we should turn it? And they say, maybe this much. I say, okay, get off the bike and go look at that. I'll hold the bike and I'll hold the handlebars right where I'll lock it in that position. And I say, look at where that wheel is relative to straight. I tell them, this is straight and this is where you told me to turn it. This is how much you said to turn it. Look at it. Okay, now get on the bike. Let's try it. Oh, still too much. Okay,
Hmm.
what do you think you need to do? I guess I need to turn it a teeny bit. I'm like, yeah, remember the rule of little bits? it comes into play here. The rule, everything on the bike is a little bit, including the turns. So yes, now get off the bike again for a second. Look at it. Wow, it's barely turned, depending on the size of the bike, right? Barely turned. So let's try that. And they try it and they're heading towards that tree. Have them straighten it back out. You're heading towards the tree, so now straighten it out again, and now you're going right at it. Okay, so a little bit did a lot. A little bit did a lot. And now let's try it where we don't straighten it out when we're heading towards that tree. Let's just keep it turned a little bit and see what happens. And they go in a circle. And we just do that circle over and over again for a minute, because we're testing out that a little bit does a lot. You can go, especially these teeny bikes, they will be facing the other way only a half of a street width. And you can even stop them when they're facing the other way and just say, look around for a second. Okay, now let's go some more. And they end up facing forward again where they started. And let's do that again. Okay, so you say, now look, when you did that, you were here. And then when you were facing the other way, you were just, you were in the middle of the street instead of on the side. Look down the street. Okay, if you can turn here in between these curbs or in between these lines in the cul-de-sac or whatever, you can turn down at the end where we do our turnarounds yourself, because you know that you can fit the bike and go back in that width of the street by turning the bike a little bit. Now, granted, have the bike kind of off to the right of the street so that you have almost the whole width of the street to do that turnaround. Don't start in the middle and then you run out of room and hit the curb. You know, be offset from the middle and do a nice gradual. And so when you go down on down the street on this one, you remind them you're going to be doing the turn by yourself. So now you're not turning the handlebar for them like you have been on every turn. You've been turning the handlebar, helping them turn. You're going to this time do not touch that handlebar. Let them turn it that little bit and go. So I play a game at this point too. Part of my street fortunately has this big cul-de-sac at one end, the end where we start. We start in the cul-de-sac, we ride towards the main road, we turn around and we come back into the cul-de-sac, back up to the cul-de-sac, and we have these 4 mailboxes, 4 houses. So I say, we're going to play the mailbox game. So what we'll do is, as we approach the first house in the cul-de-sac, I'll say, turn towards it, and I'll fix it, and I'll straighten it, and go right at that mailbox 1. And then I'll say mailbox 2, and they got to turn the wheel and go towards mailbox 2. And then I say mailbox 3, and they turn it and go towards mailbox 3. So there's turning, straightening, turning, straightening, turning, straightening.
Mm-hmm.
And that first turn was to the right, and then the other ones were to the left. And then at the end, they can, coast and stop, or I have them actually turn one more time and go towards that tree I was talking about and finish in the middle of the street, coasting to and doing the 3 steps for stopping. Once they got that turn down, they're great. Now, one thing that I like to do when they're going in that circle is that's when I tell them this is the only time that I allow you to lean a little bit. Because what happens is in a turn, they feel like they have to fight. The bike's leaning to the left and they feel like they have to be pulling their body to the right. It's so hard to trust the bike that you're supposed to actually lean with it. Think about it. You ride, when you turn, you put one knee up, one knee down, right? And you're at one with the bike. That to learn that lean in is, let's just go in circles till you feel comfortable with leaning in. And you're basically leaning towards the center. So I'm always on the left of the kid. So we're going in circles where I'm on the inside and they're just spinning around me, so to speak. So I'll say lean towards me, right? And that way they're kind of getting the feel for the bike actually holds you up. You can lean into it a little bit. And make sure they gently pedal through that turn. A lot of times they want to just stop and coast through the turn, and it's like, no, you got to kind of keep pedaling just gently, just keep your feet moving, because you don't want to come to a stop in the middle of a turn. You got to keep the bike moving. So they can coast right before they get into that turn, but they got to then pedal their way through and out of the turn to go back. Yeah. So watch their feet, make sure they're still gently pedaling through the turn. At this point, you should again be loosening your grip, maybe at that point, you're not even gripping the shirt anymore. Maybe you're even just pushing with a finger. This is my favorite part because it's like this offers zero help. If the only thing a pushing finger can do, a finger that's sitting in that spot, it can do is push on them. That if they're going slowly up a hill, you could give them a teeny bit of help by pushing them with one
Mm-hmm.
finger, which barely does anything, right? Um, but they feel your presence, and it's like they still don't realize they're biking on their own. Sometimes they do. It depends on the age of the kid and such, but you're giving them confidence you're there, even though you're physically
Mm-hmm.
with them, they know you're still there, but they have not noticed you've gone from this, to this, right? So if you can get down to a finger at that point, that'd be awesome. Some kids, again, have started to ride on their own at this point, and we're still just going through the lessons anyway, because they still
Mm-hmm.
do these lessons. But some kids have already, through all those intervals, have started to ride on their own, and you've actually done the let go. There's multiple ways to deal with the letting go, and I'll talk about that in a second. The last thing they have to learn about riding their bike is how to start. And starting is sometimes pretty tough for them, getting going, if you will. So I tell them there's 3 steps to this. And by the way, one thing I failed to mention, when you're coming to a stop or when you're starting, it's really important to remind them to keep the wheel straight. Because when they come to a stop, for example, and the wheel's cockeyed, the bike wants to go dive bomb, right? And then they don't have a nice graceful ending where they just tip to one side or the other and they put their foot down. If it's turned and the wheel kind of wants the bike to
Mm-hmm.
dive bomb. So tell them it's always important to stop with the wheel straight. It's also, of course, very important to start with the wheel straight, because you'll go nowhere if it's turned left or right. You won't get any momentum getting started. You'll just spin in a circle. So the 3 steps for starting, once we've got the bike in the right position and the wheel is straight, the 3 steps for starting is, number one, put the pedals where they belong. So where do the pedals belong? Well, if you're a righty, you put the right pedal up at the top and a little bit forward. So if you're looking from the side, it would be at about 1 o'clock, maybe 12:30. Of course, these kids don't know what that looks like half the time because they're digital age, but you do. And so it's just a little bit forward. Sometimes there's a little bolt in some of these bikes that have a little fender, if you will, over the chain, a protector over the chain. There's a bolt. Always that bolt is right where that pedal should be.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit forward. You'll see it. It's covered up, but it's a little head of a bolt. And it's like, put it right there. And then obviously the other pedals at the bottom. So now the pedals are where they belong. If you're a lefty, I would reverse it. So the top pedals, their dominant hand. Just the way I've always done it. It can work both ways and they'll figure that out over time. But, if they're going to push really hard with a leg, I'd rather it be the dominant side. So then step 2, put your feet where they belong. Okay, what's that? Well, one foot, the starter foot, if you will, sits on the starter pedal, which is the one at the top. The other foot is there to hold you up. Sometimes I call it the kickstand foot if they have a kickstand. And they're a righty because then the kickstand's on the left and the pedal's down at the bottom and their kickstand foot is their left foot and it's down there by the kickstand holding up you instead of holding up the bike. Well, both of you, I suppose. But the idea is they have a teeny lean and holding themselves up on that left foot or the kickstand foot or the supporting foot and keeping the wheel straight. It will turn on them, straighten it back out and make them freeze. Hold that position. This is the starting position. You're a statue. You can even get in front of them and show them what it looks like. You got one foot up and one foot holding yourself up. It's like you're making a triangle. And if they're struggling with this, it probably is because their foot that's holding them up is not even with the pedal, and it might be too close to the bike, right? You might have to put that foot a little further out away from the bike so that they can lean into it a little bit better so that there's a little bit more of a triangle effect. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So try that. Obviously you don't want to go too far or else you're really leaning over too much. You want to be as straight as you can, but still holding yourself up. Find that counter, that optimal position for the foot. where they can hold themselves up, but they're not leaning too much. And then I say, what do you think step 3 is? Big push, get going. And that big push, you say, look, that foot holding you up does not come off the ground till the bike is moving. Like, try it right now. And they take their foot off the ground and they start to tip over, right? They're not going anywhere. There's no, so it's like, that doesn't work, right? So let's try it again. Now put that foot on the ground, and we're going to count to 3, and I obviously get in your position. And then, and when you're doing the starting, you can kind of go back to helping them a bit. You can kind of put that hand on the shoulder a little bit, because they're going to need a little bit of help on this part of the lesson. But you tell them, big push on the count of 3, and don't worry about that lower foot. As a matter of fact, sometimes I have to literally step on their foot. I will put my foot on top of theirs and say, I'm holding it down here to remind you that you need to get going. That foot's attached to you. It's going to end up coming with us. Okay. But don't think about putting it on the pedal. Just think about that big push on the other side with the other foot, and get going, and then let that foot catch up. Now, once in a while, this happened even just recently, a kid will want to they won't put the foot on the pedal. They'll step as they're getting going. That's okay. If that gets them going, that's fine. Eventually they won't have to step, but I want them to, the step is a crutch, because you really want a big push, and the bigger the bike, the more travel that pedal gets to have to get up the bottom, and the more of a push they can get. Sure, the little bikes, whoop, it's over pretty fast. So you might even give them a teeny bit of help pushing them along to get going, but that's just something that's going to take some practice. It can derail your lesson if you get too worried about them perfecting starting. And the only, starting is not the key to this lesson. Riding is. So I because I do this in one lesson, we review this and we practice it at the end a few times, but I want to make sure that they're riding most of all, and they can practice the starting and part of it and stopping on their own. So big push and let's go. And then you go down the street. This is usually a big moment. I kind of nod at the parents, like, it's gonna happen here, and I'll start taking my finger off, or I've already taken it off, because I know they're gonna ride. Okay, because I know that I'm not helping them. I know they know how to ride. So I'm taking my finger off, and lots of different things happen here. This is a critical part of the lesson, obviously. Some will notice right away, and they'll literally turn their head and like, you're taking your hand off. And it's like, you're focusing on me too much. Okay.
Right.
You need to be doing all the things you're supposed to do. Don't worry about me. All that, I'm not taking my hand off of you. It's just bouncing around a little bit. Right? It's just bouncing around. Okay. It comes off, it comes right back on. And look, even if I was to put my hands by my sides and show them how fast you can take your hand, like a gunfighter in the Old West, and you could, pull your hand out really fast and put it right back to the grabbing onto the nape of the neck, back to where you started. Look how fast I can be helping you. You don't need to worry about me. You need to worry about you. I'm right here. Remember, I said at the beginning, I'm by your side from the very first step. Period. So that's the trick of it, is you have to get them focused on themselves. Some won't notice you've taken your hand off at all. And so for those kids, I clap a little bit. Hey, you're doing great. You're doing great. And then I put my hand back on, because I want to help them with the turn. I always I'm a little nervous about going out into the street to the main road. So when they're doing their turn, I tend to get back on them a little bit, making sure they're turning. Sometimes you have to grip them a little bit, because their turns are kind of wonky, still, but they're doing them. But you're helping them because they're leaning into the turn a little bit. So I'll grip them a little bit at the turns, and then they'll come on back, and I'll clap a couple more times and say, coast, and let's just stop here. Let's not even turn around in the cul-de-sac. Let's stop right here. And I'll say, did you note anything different about that one? Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. Some don't even notice that you were clapping. My joke with them at that point is, hey, did you notice I was clapping? And they're like, oh, I think so, maybe. You look at the parents, did you notice me clapping? And they're just like, oh my God, 'cause they know what's going on here. And they're like, yeah, you were clapping a lot. So I'll turn to the kid, I'll say, how many hands does it take to clap? And they're like, two. I'm like, okay, so if I'm clapping, how many hands are on you? So you get a, but oh, zero,
Right.
I'm riding on my own. Yes, you're the boss of the bike, remember? Um,
Hmm.
that's at one end of the spectrum. The other one, like you're letting go, you're like, okay, let's play a game. We're gonna do this again, and I'm gonna count the number of seconds that I do let go. No surprises. My goal is to do this. And let's see if I can do 1, 2, 3, or 1, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Play a game of how long I can take and at some point it's indefinite, right? It's forever.
Hmm.
So you have to play a game of how much do you really need my help? And then you could also remind them, got a little I got a little secret for you. And they're like, what? I said, well, I promised you I would never leave your side, but I never promised you that I wouldn't let go, right? And so you need to realize that when I was just touching you with a finger or even tugging your shirt, tell them then I wasn't helping you. I was there.
Right.
I was I was there to remind, but tell them it's like you are riding your bike. I'm just holding onto your shirt. I'm just
Hmm.
pressing on your back. Try it with me. Put your finger on my back. Can you help me? Are you going to stop me from doing this if you got a finger on my back? No, right? It doesn't help at all. Exactly. If you were all out of sorts, okay, that doesn't help. So you are controlling the bike. You're fixing your lean. You're doing the turns. You're doing everything. So do it again. Do it one more and say, we're going to put it all together. Let's start. Let's coast. Let's turn. Let's come back. Let's work hard to get up that hill. Let's do the whole cul-de-sac. Let's do all the mailboxes, all the way back, and then let's coast. And then we're going to come to a full stop. Let's do all of them. I call that the graduation run. If they can do all those steps, they know everything I can teach them.
Hmm.
So then there's two things left. Okay, they're riding a bike. Hooray. Um, the first thing I do is I say, listen, what did we learn today? And I go through very quickly, not the version we just did, but we go through everything we learned from rule
Yeah.
straight all the way to starting. We review what are the things you need to remember when you're riding a bike. Because when you go to bed tonight, I want you to dream about biking and I want all the stuff. It's the last thing you think about before you go to sleep tonight. Okay. The last thing you do when you're staring at the ceiling tonight is go through all 6 of these things. Okay. And think about it. And then you'll dream about biking and then you're good. I remind them that you taught yourself to balance just like you did when you were 1 year old. There's a switch in your brain that went on when you were starting to walk. You weren't great at it, but you could balance and you got better. Well, there's a switch probably right next to the walking switch. That's the riding a bike switch. And once we turn that switch on, your brain knows what to do for that too. And you never stopped walking again. You know how to,
Hmm.
so you're going to bike as long as you practice, your brain knows how to do it. It's switched on for good. You don't switch it off. That's of course if they practice. Little secret, if they don't practice, there is a chance, and I have a lesson in 2 weeks with a kid who I learned 2 years ago, didn't practice and is coming back.
Hmm.
Shame, parent. Shame. You should have had your kid practice. That's essential. So what is practice? So the very next day, for some, it's even that evening. They're so excited they want to go practice after dinner or whatever. You go to that parking lot with no cars. Obviously, it's a empty parking lot, flat, and you say we're going to play the parking lot game. And what the parking lot game is, and this is with as little help as possible from the parents, none if possible. You just say you're gonna go and you're gonna go through this parking lot down the lanes and you're gonna look for a parking space. But guess what? And we actually get off the bike at that point and we pretend we're on bikes and we walk it and we walk,
Hmm.
my cul-de-sac, and we go, we say we can't run over the lines, the imaginary lines here in this parking lot. You can't run them over because there's cars there. Every spot's filled, and we're gonna go to the end of the line, and we're gonna have to go around. We'll turn left. There'll be plenty of room for a nice graceful left turn, and go back down the other way down the next line and down that lane. And again, sorry, all the spots are filled. So now you're going to turn right. So keep moving to to down each row. And that way they've done a left turn at this end, and then they do a right turn at the other end, and then they do one more left turn, and then you say, oh, I think I hear a car leaving. So let's go back where we came from. So now you reverse it and you serpentine back. That's what the parking lot game is, and that's what practice looks like, where they're just going up and down and staying off the paint, nice graceful turns, staying straight, and coming to a stop at the end where you say, oh, I think you found the spot. It's open. Stop your bike there. And they coast and they come to a stop. Then I say, okay, that's the parking lot game. But before you play that game, you have to do one thing. You have to play red light, green light. What's that? Okay, that's when we practice starting and stopping first, because I'm not going to turn you loose in a parking lot without reviewing Coach Jeff's 3 steps for stopping and 3 steps for starting, right? So we at this point, you might have to help them a little bit with the practice where you're putting your hand back there, but again, not gripping, just letting them know you're there. And you'll say, okay, green light, and they have to go. And then you get, once they start moving, as soon as that bike's moving, you have to say red light, and they have to do their 3 steps for stopping. And then do that 10 more times. Start, start, and stop. Because then you know, okay, the starts might be kind of messy, that's fine, but the stops need to be pretty decent, where you know that if you can let them ride through the parking lot, you know they're not going to ride right into a curb or down the road or whatever. They need to be, if you say stop, they need to be able to stop. And that's
Okay.
what practice looks like. There's one last thing I say to them before I let them go, and I like to share this with you too, is that I'll say, you know, when they show up for my lesson, I always ask them, how you feeling about this lesson? And they're like, a little nervous, a little afraid. Afraid of what? Well, falling or whatever else. And I get it. No worries. Everybody comes to this lesson a little bit unsure, a little anxious, a little upset, or a little bit nervous, whatever. I always capture that at the beginning, because at the end of the lesson, I say, so, hey, kid, when you showed up, you told me you were a little bit nervous, a little afraid. You didn't know me. You didn't know what was going to happen. You probably thought it wasn't going to work out. And what are you doing now? And the kid says, I'm riding a bike. I'm like, that's right. So in order for you to learn today, you had to be brave. You had to be strong. You had to believe in yourself. If you're brave and you're strong and you believe in yourself, you can do anything. And you proved it today. You learned how to ride a bike. And life is like that, kiddo. You're going to have all kinds of challenges in your life. And if the kid's 5, you're going to have to remember this for them, right? If the parents are like, I look at them like, you know, you might want to remember this. But, you know, an 8-year-old, it might just register. I said, it doesn't matter if you remember me, the street, what bike you were riding. I want you to remember this, that life's going to throw you curveballs. And if you can be brave and strong and believe in yourself and learn how to ride a bike, you can do that over and over again. Any challenge that comes your way, you can do it. And just remember the first big challenge. Remember the day you learned how to ride a bike, because it might motivate you in that situation down the road that you can do it. And that's the last lesson I give them. And I say, put the bike up, you're done, get out of here. So that's the Bike Whisperers. It took quite a while, I warned you, but that's like all the steps in learning how to ride a bike. You just don't push them down a hill. Although it works for some kids. Not
Well, that was fantastic. I've got pages and notes here. So
but do you have any questions?
um
You were asking them along the way.
I was asking them along the way. Can you I think you answered this, but just so that I make sure I understand. When you're at the end of the street, so you're kind of going like down the street and turning around and coming
Right.
back. You're not getting to the end of the street and having them stop and then physically turning. Like you're actually guiding them through a turn every time you go back and
every time, even from the very good question, because even from the very first one, remember, until we teach you how to turn, you're turning the handlebar a little bit for them to make them turn around. It's sloppy and all that, but you want them to keep pedaling through and coming all the way back. So they need to be pedaling from the second you start at the beginning pedal all the way down the street, pedal all through the turn, pedal all the way back, and then you
Mhm.
release. You might even turn them around so they're facing back the way they came at the end. So the cul-de-sac, you might turn around one more time. So you turn
So do
the
you do
far end,
something like one hand on their neck and then one hand on the
a
handlebar
gentle,
and kind of
yep,
make the turn happen?
yep, exactly. And then take that hand off the handlebars and go back to just holding at the nape because you're out of balance when you're helping anywhere else. Exactly.
Right.
For the turn, the beginning, yeah, you say, I'm going to stop this bike for you and I'm going to turn this bike for you, both down there at the end of the street. And even when we come back, we'll do a quick little turnaround and then we'll coast to a stop over here where we started. You do all the turning. You tell them you have nothing to worry about but the rule of straight. You have nothing to worry about
Hmm.
coasting here. You have nothing to worry about but thinking about the balance. Okay, now I'm going to teach you turning, or no, now we're going to stop, right? And then I'm going to teach you turning. So no, we do stopping before turning. So yeah, they will have gone through several up and backs with you doing the turns right through stopping before we learn turning. And then you say, okay, now you're in charge of turning. And I do it at that point too, because they've started to gain a good confidence that they're controlling the bike.
Yeah. And
Oh,
they,
so
kind of feel it happen each time going back and forth too.
exactly. They start to, yes, every time you go down the street, if you're structured like this, you're getting them to get in that mode a little bit more and a little bit more. And yes, over the course of time, your grip is getting looser and looser. And yeah, I'm pretty good at it because I've done it a long time, but if they're not tipping back and forth and they're keeping pretty good momentum and they're going straight, you'll feel like you're barely helping them. You'll feel
Hmm.
so the less help you feel they're giving them, the less help you should give them. In other words, loosen your grip as you feel like you're not even contributing to their balance that much anymore. And
Yeah.
just be so gradual about that over the course of 12 or 13 or 14 or 15, whatever it is, trips up and down the street, that they're forgetting about you slowly.
Yeah. And so um, this probably goes without a question, but I'm just gonna ask it anyways.
Sure.
Um, but transitioning between the lessons, do you just practice it until they seem pretty comfortable with that thing? Or is it like, even if they're not all the way there, do you just move on?
That's a great that no, that is a great question. When it comes to the rule of straight, I want to get that one right because to me, body posture is foundational, right? It if they're gonna not be comfortable, if they're not pedaling, if their feet are flying off and all that, that first step we do where we're trying to get the body right, I will do that several times. Um, I want it to be close. So the quick answer is 90%, right? For the rule of straight, make sure 90% of the time they're doing everything right. If they're looking
Yeah.
down the whole time, you're not ready for step two.
Right.
But if they're looking down a little bit, or if their foot slides off once, or a hand's moving around, or something weird's happening, or their arms are straight and you tell them to loosen it, you know, if they're getting it mostly right, that's fine. Just make sure that you are really diligent about correcting that every single time after that. If you see
Hmm.
you want to knock that out to close to perfection, if you will, as you're doing the lesson. So yes, you can move on. You don't have to practice rule of straight over and over and over again. I do tend to move on if they got it 90%. Coasting, they either got it or they don't, right? You
Yeah.
use your hands for leaning, either they're doing it or they're not doing it. So if they're not doing it and they keep leaning, you're like, let's practice that again. Remember, that
Hmm.
one's hard. So you might do that one several times where it's like, as soon as they really fix it. And if they're not doing it, go back to the street at the beginning and let's do it again. Let's start over. Push on my hand. Okay. Let's
Yeah.
rock back and forth. Go back and teach that one a second time and try it again if they're really not getting it. Forceps to stopping, you're not going to, you will be practicing that one for the 3 to 4 steps for stopping. You'll be practicing that one over and over again every time you come to the end anyway. So it's not
Hmm.
nail that one. Turning, they'll keep practicing their turning. So really, it's only in the very beginning where that question is most paramount
Yeah.
is making sure that you have 90% that they've kind of got it. Yeah, very good question.
I don't think I have any other questions right now.
Cool.
super
Cool.
helpful.
Well, I'm glad to help. Certainly, people are more than encouraged to ask questions through the chat or what have you. But I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure it'll be fine. If there is a scrape, if there is a scrape, if they do fall, I would immediately say, okay, let's get up. Let's make sure everything's working on your body. Do your knees, then do your elbows. Oh, you're doing the chicken dance. That's a good time to throw that one in there too. Get them laughing.
Mhm.
Dust them off, dust yourself off. Heck, I've been bleeding after a fall once or twice. They land on me, and I do kind of, if they're small, I do, if we know we're going down, if they turned the wheel 90 degrees, this bike is going down, I will grab them under the armpits and I will hold them in midair. The bike will be on the ground and I'll be holding them above midair, just because I I really try to avoid a fall because every kid's different.
Yeah, that's good advice.
It really can destroy the lesson. Then everyone's like, oh, give up. I want to go inside. And most parents
Hmm.
will say, fine, go inside. So you just lost, especially if that happened at step 5. Oh, we were so close, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, no, you're fine. You're fine. Get back on the bike. Let's ride back and then we'll talk about it. And by the time they ride back, they've forgotten half the time that they've even fallen. It's like, that was great. And what you do, Kristen, is you say, you know why you fell down? You know why we had an abrupt stop? We don't call it a fall. You know why you had an abrupt stop or a quick stop on that one? You turned the wheel. That's okay.
Hmm.
And why'd you turn the wheel? You know what? I think you might have had spaghetti stiff arms instead. You're not loose. Or you know what? I'm seeing your shoulders coming up here. I want your shoulders relaxed. Or I see you leaning forward. Try and catch what they might have done wrong,
Hmm.
or even make something up. Okay, because
Yeah.
give them something. Okay, we we had a little problem on that one. Let's just fix it. Loosen those arms, loosen that grip. It's probably your grip. Let's on this next one, let's make sure your grip is loose. Get them
Hmm.
thinking next step. It's an easy fix. If I do what I'm being told here, I won't fall this time. And hopefully they won't. Or you didn't use your hands to balance quick enough, that's all. So try and do it a little bit sooner. Or did you use the rule of little bits? Did you do it too much? Right? Maybe you do it a little bit less. Maybe you turned the wheel too much. Maybe you pushed down to correct too much. Maybe when the wheel went right, when you went left to fix it, you went way too much, right?
Hmm.
And remind them that, remember, you're the boss of the bike. You are constantly telling it what to do, not the other way around. So make sure we're telling it what to do in the best way for, and look for small corrections for them to focus on and get out of that falling mentality that you're going to fall this time. Um, they say get right back on and all that. I think it's really important because you don't want to lose that momentum in the lesson.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd almost in parents, if you do have to give up on the day, maybe they really took a big tumble and it's over for today. I would start I would start over, but go quickly through those steps again. Let's review.
Hmm.
Let's review. Let's see if you can still remember what to do. Let's go through those steps again real quickly and get right back to where we were when we stopped the other time. But let's start over because you need to start easy and focus on little things and then keep building, because every time you do another lesson, you're layering on something else to think about.
Right, right.
So you want those things to become automatic as you're doing all the other things. Because even on the stopping one, while they're riding, it's amazing. They're already like, do I stop here? Do I stop here? It's like, I'll tell you when to stop, relax. They're thinking
Yeah,
about stopping and they don't even realize they're pedaling and they're
right.
doing everything correctly and all this other stuff. They're worried about stopping because that's what they're focused on. And the other stuff is starting to happen automatically. You'll feel it. You'll be like, all right, so this is how you learn to ride a bike.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, great questions. Well, I appreciate it, Kristen. Best of luck to you.